Hello, Eastside One. My name is Elvira Lasea, and today is March 12th, 2019. And I'm going to be talking about biodiversity conservation within coral reefs. To start off, you're probably wondering, what is biodiversity? Well, biodiversity is the variation of all life on Earth at all its levels. It is comprised of ecosystems and genes. It surrounds the evolutionary, cultural, and ecological aspects that sustain life here on planet Earth, as well as incorporating threatened, rare, and endangered species, such as invertebrate, microorganisms, etc. Now, I want to talk a little bit about coral reefs and how they reproduce and grow, just to give you a little overview of that. So for coral reproduction, coral undergo two specific reproduction processes, which are asexual and sexual reproduction. For asexual reproduction, it occurs through a process called budding, and this is when a coral polyp reaches a specific size and divides itself. This then produces polyps or colonies that have become copies of one another. And asexual reproduction can also occur through fragmentation, which is when a part of a colony will break off and form a new one. Fragmentation happens during certain specific occurrences, such as strong storms or being struck by fishermen's equipment. So for sexual reproduction, it is when eggs become fertilized by sperm, most likely forming a new colony and becoming free-swimming larvae. There are also two types of sexual reproduction in corals, and those include external and internal. Internal transpires at night, where some coral hatch eggs inside their polyp body and release sperm into the water. As for external, it takes place with sperm that will sink, and then those polyps that hold eggs carry them, and fertilization happens within their polyp body. For coral growth, a single coral polyp in a reef usually grows very small, less than 1.5 centimeters in size. Reefs typically form when the coral grows in shallow waters close to the shore or in smaller islands. The greater number of reefs are named fringe reefs because they fringe along coastlines of nearby land masses. Large colonies in coral reefs take quite a bit to grow, moving at a very slow pace. However, coral that reproduce at a more rapid pace can develop past 6 inches in length each year. These special coral polyps can be found in mushroom corals, which exceed 5 inches across. Individual colonies of coral reefs can live on for decades, whereas some deep-sea colonies survive past 400 years at a time. Something that is very helpful in determining the age of coral is that they contain annual rings, much like our land trees do. For example, scientists have found that the Great Barrier Reef has stood tall for more than 20,000 years. Why is biodiversity so important within coral reefs? Well, coral reefs have been assumed to have the highest biodiversity of any other ecosystem residing on planet Earth. Coral contain important breakthroughs in medicine, and these can include cures for cancer, ulcers, heart disease, asthma, bacterial infections, etc. Reefs can prove cost-effective in their restoration processes. Studies for climate changes have shown that for over 8 Caribbean nations, which are the Cayman Islands, Dominica, Antigua and Barbuda, Bermuda, St. Lucia, Anguilla, Barbados, and Jamaica, all have the most cost-effective strategies. Reefs can help support tourism and entertainment purposes as well. For the Great Barrier Reef, its estimated value from Deloitte Access Economics is $56 billion, with an economic value of $6.4 billion each year. What breakthroughs are being found within coral reefs? All across the Earth, climate change is starting to latch on to different species of corals. In the shallows of the Fiji Pacific Islands, a marine researcher named Cody S. Clements and his team have found that coral bleaching is trying to take hold of the corals inhabited there. Coral bleaching occurs when coral is stressed from factors such as active heat rising and pollution. Clements and his team have done a study of multiple experiments in order to help best aid the coral. They now plant uneven corals that stay atop plastic soda bottles with a concrete slab to support all 36 species they work with. Back in Queensland, Australia, scientists like David Sugja are taking a lab-grown approach. They then transport hundreds of these coral pieces to the Great Barrier Reef. Another group of scientists in Australia, led by Stanford Palumbi, have taken it upon themselves to seed blotches of coral with more than 1 million lab-raised coral larvae. In their quest, they have found a powerful algae that can withstand the ever-growing heat which spreads throughout the oceans. This is a heat-reducing algae which was found growing naturally at the seafloor, where CO2 bubbles are released. These heat-reducing algae can help further evolve other coral species as the climate changes more throughout future years to come. What are some factors that pose threats to coral reefs? The increasing warm temperatures in the ocean, as well as the heavy manufacturing, consumption, and waste of plastics are having a profound negative effect on coral reefs. In the Asian Pacific, more than 11 billion plastic items were found on a third of coral reefs. It is highly likely that this number will become larger by 15 billion in 2025. Researchers have discovered that plastic plaguing will develop 20-fold towards coral. The types of plastics that were found were rice sacks, bottles, and bags. Coral reefs enable over 275 million people to thrive from the food, cultural importance, earnings from tourism, and coastal protection they provide. Types of coral that are usually most affected during plastic wasting are the finger-like or branched-out coral reefs because the plastic proceeds to get entangled in them. Researchers have also found that corals were contaminated by plastic near Indonesia, whereas Australian reefs had a lower concentration. Thailand and Myanmar were in between the two. What components do coral reefs need to thrive as a species? Well, the main factor coral reefs need to survive as a species is sunlight. Corals use photosynthetic algae called zooxanthellae, which develop inside of them for oxygen, hence why both the coral and zooxanthellae need sunlight to survive. Corals enjoy growing in shallow waters, but rarely flourish in waters deeper than 165 feet. Corals also need clear water to enable the sunlight to hit them in a way that produces the best results. Non-transparent water does not help corals because it significantly keeps a lot of sunlight out, as well as plankton and sediment that clouds the water. Reef-building corals prosper in warmer temperatures of water, but since there are so many diverse species, each coral can withstand different results. For example, a lot of corals usually live in waters that have temperatures ranging from about 68 to 90 degrees Fahrenheit. Since corals are very sensitive to pollution and deposits, they always need to occupy clean water, clear of waste and debris that can enable an overgrowth of seaweed. Corals do not live in estuaries because they need an even ratio of salt to water to survive. Coral bleaching and its impact. As previously mentioned a few slides back, coral bleaching is the occurrence that happens to coral when they are stressed and live in a habitat that is not quite suitable for them to live in, like water that has reached extreme heat changes from climate change. Coral react to the phenomenon by turning white, while some even brown to show decay, eventually leading to their demise. In Australia, about every 27 years or so, a trend occurs with coral bleaching taking the forefront, which was found by Australia's independent climate communication organization, the Climate Council, in July 2018. To the coral's dismay, this alarming trend has stayed stagnant once every 6 years. If climate change continues to unwaver, by the year 2030, The Great Barrier Reef could experience a tremendous coral bleaching outbreak on a wide scale every 2 years. On a much larger scale, all of Earth's coral reefs could experience coral bleaching annually instead of only a few times here and there by 2050. Now I'm going to talk about the diversity of coral reefs, and there are 4 very unique classifications of coral that can be found in our vast oceans. These are hard coral, soft coral, sea fans, and tropical coral reefs. Hard corals class is named Scleraclinia, or stony corals. Stony corals are similar to sea anemones, except they produce a hard skeleton. 2 forms of Scleraclinia are colonial coral, which originate in clear or shallow tropical waters and are main reef builders, and solitary coral, found in all regions which do not form reefs. Soft coral, or Alcyonidae, do not manufacture calcium carbonate skeletons, nor are reef builders. They possess tiny, spiky skeletal components, which are called sclerites. Most soft coral employ their zooanthellae, while others are able to gather small floating food particles nearby. Sea fans, or gorgonian, are found in many different oceans around Earth. Their individual miniature polyp colonies usually form upright, flat, and branch out, similar to that of a fan. Some sea fans vary in bushy, whip-like, and coated structures as well. Tropical reefs are organic and form in tropical waters by living organisms such as calcareous algae. Abiotic reefs like to form by sand sediments and other various materials in shallow waters. And that concludes this discussion on biodiversity conservation in coral reefs, and I hope you enjoyed and learned a bit about coral reefs. Thank you.